risk of snow that could cause some disruption. And we will, of course, keep you updated.
Transport revolution in the coming years.
Could a study of my brainwaves make me more productive?
The way we work is constantly changing and will be
We're in
vastly
Bryce
different
Norton
in the
as the
future.
RAF celebrates 100 years since its formation.
And we'll discover how important
Need to catch up on the day's action from the Commonwealth Games.
And I'll be at RAF
Well, we're here
Norfolk,
with all the
sharing some
stories
of my
behind the medals.
experiences of
Get
being
the
an
news,
operational
analysis
forecaster
and
on
special
RAF
guests
base.
from the Gold
Join us
Coast.
for
The
Weather World,
2018
Good Friday
Commonwealth
at
Games
7:30
on BBC World.
News Channel.
Join Lenny Henry as he explores his Caribbean roots
It's like a big stone in my heart.
and discovers what it means to be part of the Commonwealth, its complicated legacy,
You're pretty much walking into history here.
and its potential future.
I think that needs to be reimagined, rebranded.
Lenny Henry, the Commonwealth Kid, Easter Monday at 9 on BBC
and
One.
life are intrinsically connected. Understanding
There are many
the
movies out
principles
there that claim
behind
to be
the
comedy.
art
It's all of it. And on the one hand, it's a political tale. On the other hand, it is magic, realist,
Join
fable.
James
It is
Fox
baggy and
as he
overlong. You can
travels the
either just
country
see it as a
to
really
get
good
beneath
popcorn
the
adventure
skin of
or as something
Japan's
much deeper. That's
landscapes,
what a proper cult movie
cities,
looks like. My problem
and
with it is I
traditions.
wanted it to be darker.
The script is laughable, but not in a good way. It's just proved so divisive. I was reminded of the friendship between Elliot and E.T. Every time anyone says mockumentary, immediately you think, is it as good as Spinal Tap? The answer is no. Very smartly reinvented a franchise, and who thought that was possible? It does the thing that cinema is meant to do at its very best, to completely immerse you, to transport you, to take you to another world.
Words of Wisdom, the film review, tomorrow at 5:45 on the BBC News channel.
Hello everyone, this is Newsday on the BBC. I'm Rico Hizon in Singapore. The headlines. Moscow expels 60 U.S. diplomats. The United Nations warns the spy poisoning case is pushing Russia and the West towards a new Cold War. The battle for blue skies. Beijing cuts pollution by half to face a brighter future.
I'm Kasia Madeira in London, also in this programme. Theresa May promises to make Brexit a success for everyone and says it will mean more money for schools and hospitals. And playing in Pyongyang, we meet the South Korean bands promoting peace with the North.
Live from our studios in Singapore and London. This is BBC World News. It's Newsday.
Glad you could join us. It's 8 in the morning here in Singapore, 1 a.m. in London, and 3 in the morning in Moscow, where Russia has formally retaliated in the row about the poisoning of a former spy in the UK. 60 U.S. diplomats are to be expelled from the country. Overall, the number is expected to match that sent home by Western governments who blame Russia for the attack. In a further ratcheting up of tensions, the U.S. says it reserves the right to respond further. From Moscow, Steve Rosenberg has the details.
The diplomatic pressure has been unprecedented. Russian diplomats expelled, foreign ambassadors recalled after the Salisbury attack. It was never a question of whether Moscow would respond, but when. The announcements came tonight. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Russia was expelling 60 US diplomats for the 60 Russians America had ordered out. It's also shutting the US consulate in St. Petersburg, staff there given until Saturday to vacate the building. And there will be other measures too.
As I understand it, Russia plans to take the same unjustified actions against 28 other countries that stood in solidarity with the UK. Russia is further isolating itself following the brazen chemical attack.
An attack that left Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia. Earlier, the US ambassador to Moscow told me he was in no doubt who had targeted them.
How certain are you that the Russian state was behind the attack in Salisbury?
There's been enough there to not only convince the United States, but about 25 other countries that have taken similar actions, that there's enough evidence to believe that the Russian state was behind this action in Salisbury.
Moscow continues to insist that it's innocent, that it had nothing whatsoever to do with the Salisbury poisoning. Tonight's tit-for-tat was expected, but it comes with a warning that if there are further hostile steps against Moscow, Russia will take more measures against the West. Some in Moscow fear a spiralling diplomatic war with the West could end in military conflict.
This is not the way for solution, it is the way to the hell. If you have not so many diplomats as you have a lack of information, you have a lack of trust, you can react in this or that way, in a wrong way, from the wrong point of view, and this is the way to the hell.
The West sent a strong message here over Salisbury. Moscow has its own message for the West. Don't push Russia. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
Well, one of the two Russians whose poisoning sparked this diplomatic row is now recovering in hospital. Yulia Skripal, the daughter of Sergei Skripal, the former Russian spy, is now conscious, and she is talking after being poisoned with that nerve agent. The British hospital where she's being treated says she is responding well to that treatment. Our correspondent Daniel Sanford has this update.
What we don't know is, of course, whether she'll be able to shed any light on how it was that she became contaminated. I understand that it's her left hand that shows clear signs of contamination, and it was her father, Sergei Skripal's right hand, that showed clear signs of contamination. And that does add weight to this theory that it was the front door handle of the house that was where this Novichok nerve agent gel had been smeared.
Daniel Sanford with that update. Now, also making news today, President Trump has said that he may hold up a trade agreement which was agreed with South Korea until after a deal was reached with the North. It's a very strong card, Mr. Trump said in a speech in Ohio, where preparations are being made for a historic meeting between the US and North Korean leaders that Washington hopes will lead to denuclearization. Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May has been touring the UK to mark exactly a year before Britain is due to leave the European Union. She visited all four countries in the United Kingdom and said that she was looking forward to the post-Brexit future with optimism.
I think there are real opportunities for the United Kingdom. I think there's a bright future out there. And yes, I think Brexit is going to deliver a country that will be different, but I think there are real opportunities for us as an independent nation for the future.
A judge in California has ruled that Starbucks and other coffee companies will have to put a cancer warning label on coffee products sold in the state. The ruling says that there was a failure to show that the threat from a chemical compound produced when roasting coffee was insignificant. The companies are expected to appeal. The Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala Yousafzai has returned to Pakistan for the first time since she was shot in the head by militants on her school bus. The campaigner for female education made a televised speech from the Prime Minister's residence in Islamabad, saying that it was her dream to live in Pakistan in peace and without fear. An unmanned Chinese space station is about to make an uncontrolled fall to Earth. Experts aren't sure exactly when or where Tiangong-1 will come down, but they are pretty sure that the chances of anyone being hit by debris are slim. Now, we brought you quite a lot of coverage of Kim Jong-un's visit to China this week right here on Newsday, but here is a new look at the journey filmed from inside his carriage. You can see that the train has been fitting, you can see in the background, well there they are, rather fetching rows of purple leather armchairs. Mr. Kim also being greeted by Chinese officials on board. These were actually the first television pictures which were shown on his visit on North Korean TV, and well, you can see there Mr. Kim seeming to rather enjoy himself.
More now on our lead story at this hour and the rapidly developing diplomatic row between Russia and the United States. Just a few hours ago, Moscow announced it was expelling 60 American diplomats and closing the consulate in St. Petersburg. And that mirrors the steps taken by Washington after claims Russia was behind the poisoning of the former double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia. Well, the U.S. State Department says it may now take more action of its own. Our correspondent in Washington, Chris Buckler, gave me the latest.
60 officials for 60 officials, a consulate closed for a consulate. It is very clear that Russia is sending a message back to America after the US said, listen, enough is enough, we must take action here. And what is very clear from the State Department today and from the briefings that we've had is that there continues to be this real feeling in Washington that unless Russia listens, there is this potential of yet more response, yet more retaliation. And you know, just listen to the diplomatic language being used today. Russia not interested in a dialogue, really saying that the actions that they're taking are unjustified. But again, you find yourself with this one situation in the UK, this poisoning of a former spy, that is really leading to problems between America and Russia that go beyond that as well. We have had some reflection of that as well, that there is concern about Russian activity inside the United States as well. So there is this potential that this could get worse, that things could become a lot frostier between the two countries.
And the U.S. State Department says it may take more action. Where's this really going? Could it lead to a deterioration of diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Russia?
Well, certainly some senior officials in the UN are saying that this has the potential to deteriorate into a kind of situation that we saw during the Cold War. I don't think we're anywhere near there yet, but certainly things are becoming colder. That is very clear. And the big concern about all this is not just about what happened in the UK, not just these claims of spying that have been taking place in America, but also what potentially could happen elsewhere. There are obviously disagreements and there are problems between America and Russia on a whole range of different issues. Ukraine, Syria, and those questions about what happened internationally could ultimately feed into this. It's worth reflecting that Russia has really sent out a message back to America, but they are reserving their right here in Washington to send yet another message back.
Chris Buckler there speaking to Rico a little earlier. Of course, we've got much more on that story on our website. Now, China's rapid industrialisation has left it as one of the most polluted countries on the planet. But with toxic smog responsible for over 1 million premature deaths a year, one city has begun to do something about it. In Beijing, pollution levels fell more than 50% this winter. Much of that can be credited to an official crackdown on factories burning coal. John Sudworth reports.
Beijing's skies are a strange colour of late blue. In place of the usual toxic grey, this winter has brought prolonged bouts of days like these. And here, in part at least, is why. This factory is one of thousands that have been forced to close. They used to make ceramic tiles here. Now the kilns that once belched acrid smoke stand idle.
It was all very sudden. There were no meetings or warnings. The inspection team just turned up and shut us down.
Beijing still sees plenty of days like this, but the city's average level of PM 2.5s, the tiny particles that make up these P-super smogs, fell by 20% last year. And here's further evidence of the huge political will involved: new gas pipes. Hundreds of villages surrounding Beijing have been ordered to stop burning coal on such a scale that the price of gas on the international market doubled.
Beijing's ability to launch its battle for blue skies is, it could be argued, down to its authoritarian advantage, forcing many thousands to switch energy supplies overnight and closing factories at the stroke of a pen. But it's also had something else on its side, a little bit of luck.
Here's a typical day last winter. That's Beijing, buried beneath a blanket of smog, the reds and purples on the map. This winter, though, the city has been blessed with unusually strong northerly winds, bringing with them cleaner air, the blues, greens and yellows. In the bigger picture, though, China's wider, continental-sized pollution problem has not gone away. But even if the progress is limited, it's significant.
China has begun to show that it can trade economic growth for the environment. John Sudworth, BBC News, Beijing.
You're watching Newsday on the BBC, live from London and Singapore. Still to come on the program. Playing for peace and harmony, South Korean bands plan a massive concert across the border in Pyongyang.
Also coming up on the program, Rico has been filming a documentary about the amazing sights of his beloved Philippines. We'll have a sneak peek of what he found.
The accident that happened here was of the sort that cannot produce a meltdown. In this case, the precautions worked, but they didn't work well enough to prevent some old fears about the safety features of these stations from resurfacing.
The Republic of Ireland has become the first country in the world to ban smoking in the workplace. From today, anyone lighting up in businesses, restaurants will face a heavy fine.
The President was on his way out to the Hilton Hotel where he had been addressing a trade union conference. A small crowd outside included his assailant.
It has become a symbol of Paris. 100 years ago, many Parisians wished it had never been built. The Eiffel Tower's birthday is being marked by a reenactment of the first ascent by Gustave Eiffel.
Welcome back, everyone. You're watching Newsday on the BBC. I'm Rico Hizon in Singapore.
And I'm Kash Madeira in London. Our top stories this hour. Moscow says it is expelling 60 American diplomats in retaliation after the US ordered a similar number of Russians to leave in the row over the poisoning of a former spy.
Donald Trump has suggested he may delay the trade arrangement the US agreed with South Korea until a deal is struck with North Korea over denuclearization. And these pictures of a cheetah dropping in on a tourist on safari in Tanzania are popular on BBC.com. One of the big cats jumped onto the car's bonnet while the other actually climbed into the back. But the passenger, Britton Hayes from America, said everyone stayed calm and eventually the cheetahs went away again without harming anyone. Thank goodness. Let's now take a look at some of the front pages from around the world, and we start off with the front page of the China Daily, and it highlights what it calls the positive global response to talks between China and North Korea's leaders. Well, global leaders as well, as heads of major international organizations, have praised this week's meeting between President Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. Well, the Straits Times of Singapore reports that North and South Korea will be holding their first summit in more than a decade on the 27th of April. The paper says the summit will take place at the border village of Panmunjom, and that China has commended the two sides for their efforts to improve relations. And finally, you have the international edition of the Japan Times, and it features a basketball-playing robot. The front page photograph shows a robot called Q rehearsing for a game in Tachikawa next week. Well, the paper says the robot was created by engineers from Toyota and never misses a free throw. Well, my son plays basketball. I hope he doesn't miss a free throw. So, Kasha, which stories are sparking discussions online?
Oh, Rico, I bet your son's far better than that robot. Now, you were talking about a cheetah earlier. I'm going to be telling you about a pig. It's a school principal from New Jersey, in fact, who's made a bit of a name for himself online by kissing the said pig. This is the West End Memorial Elementary School. This is the pig in question. And this is where Vincent Myers had promised his students that if they had read 10,000 books by April, he would kiss a pig. They did. And so, well, that was his response. He said that it was a great way of motivating his students, although one of them actually said that they were disappointed he only kissed a baby pig. My goodness, you can't please kids these days. Now, South Korean K-pop and rock stars are heading to North Korea to perform in Pyongyang. It's for the first time in over 10 years. 160 musicians and technicians will put on a concert on April the 1st. Well, we met one South Korea rock band making the return journey to North Korea after 16 years.
두려움이 있었어요. 무대에서 과연 우리가 될까 이게? 이곳의 사람들은 락이라는 걸 아예 모른다는데 물론 뭐 헤드뱅잉이나 뭐 50핏, 뭐 점핑 이런 건 없었지만
사실 몸만 안 움직이지 이 손이랑 얼굴 표정들은 뛰어서 놀 수 있을 정도의 그런 표정이셨어요, 사실은. 예.
좀 기뻤어요, 개인적으로. 다시 가게 돼서.
A lot of my friends, like, you know, I think they're a little bit jealous. They'd like to go. Like some people told me.
또다시 평양을 이렇게 가게 될 줄은 정말 꿈에도 몰랐습니다. 앞쪽에 있는 그 할머니 관객분하고 이렇게 아이 컨택이 됐었어요. 근데 우시는 거예요. 근데 그 할머니를 보는 순간 저의 외할머니가 떠올랐어요. 저희 외할머니가 이산 가족이세요. 너무 슬펐죠. 이제 할머니가 얼마나 보고 싶으시겠어요, 가족분들이. 그래서 제가 알기로 멤버분들도 다 같이 울면서 연주를 한 걸로 알고 있거든요. 처음에 우리는 하나였어. 공연 끝나고 저희가 하루 그 밖에 이제 관광을 같이 다니는 시간이 있었거든요. 그때 돌아다닐 때 전부 알아보시더라고요.
그리고 이제 또 지하철을 아주 깊숙한 지하철을 타러 내려가서 지하철을 타고 만날 때 쓰던 사람들, 정말 이렇게 평범한 것들, 그냥 버스에서 누구 만나서 강아지 보고 인사 나누고 뭐 했던 것들이 막상 한국에 돌아왔을 때 내가 거길 다시 못 가는 거야 이런 느낌이 딱 되니까 이게 되게 만감이 교차했어요.
16년 만에 간다라는 게 저희들한테는 사실은 시간이 흐르면서 점점 멀어지는구나. 이젠 더 이상은 갈 수 없는 완전한 단절이 되나? 그러던 차에 가는 거잖아요, 지금. 그래서 더욱 더 절실한 게 좀 있고 좋은 계기가 됐으면 좋겠어요.
Wow, well, that will be a really historic concert, and that is due to take place on the 1st of April in Pyongyang. Of course, if we can, we'll cover that for you. But as you saw there, a lot of emotion about where those performers were going back to. Rico, I know you've done a really wonderful documentary. You went back to the Philippines and you've done some real amazing stuff on the wildlife and the natural habitat of some of the islands on the Philippines. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Yes, Kasia, this will air on April the 7th and 14th on BBC World News, and I've been to places where I never thought I would be visiting in my life. It was on my bucket list, but I never even thought that I would go to these destinations in my lifetime. And just like yourself, you have a Polish heritage, Kasia, and you know, sometimes we think that we know about our home country pretty well, but when I was invited to take part in this BBC program, looking at the rich culture and rare wildlife in the Philippines, I was amazed, Kasia, at just how much I didn't know and places I hadn't been to. A short time ago, I was joined by my co-presenter on Philippines Island Treasures, BBC wildlife presenter and explorer Mike Dilger, and he told me why he chose the Philippines.
Well, as someone who's been obsessed with wildlife all my life, Rico, Philippines has long been on my bucket list to go to. It's a remote archipelago that's been evolving species for thousands of years. It's one of the most biologically diverse countries on the planet. There's thousands of species found there and nowhere else in the world. For example, 194 endemic species of birds that I was desperate to see. Huge amounts of endemism of the plants, the butterflies, the reptiles, the amphibians, and also as well, a lot of people live in the Philippines and the resources are under threat, so much of that wildlife is really rare. So I wanted to see it while it was still there.
That's true, and it was a wonderful journey that we had over 3 weeks last year. And one of the places I always wanted to go to was the hanging coffins of Sagada, Mike. I mean, coffins hanging by the side of the mountains. It was creepy, but amazing. Let's take a look at this sequence from the program.
I'm meeting up with my BBC colleague, Rico Hizon.
I've always wanted to come to this place, but I've never had the chance. But look at these hanging coffins of Sagada.
Absolutely amazing.
It is an Igorot tribal tradition of burying their dead, and it's been going on now for, what, 500 years? It's eerie, but fascinating, don't you think?
It's like a vertical churchyard.
Yeah.
This is the only location in the Philippines this practice takes place.
These hanging coffins of Sagada are a great example of the diverse culture and traditions in the Filipino community. You know, I grew up here in the Philippines, and I've never been here before. The hanging coffins of Sagada, Mike. What was the most special moment for you during your 3-week stay in the Philippines? Was it cuddling a crocodile and releasing it to the water?
That was pretty high up there, actually. I got my hands on Rico, the rarest crocodile in the world, the Philippine crocodile. It's critically endangered. It's in danger of going extinct. And there's a wonderful foundation called the Mabuwaya Foundation in northern Luzon, where the people there, Tess and Bernard, are trying to save the crocodiles by rearing the eggs in captivity, hatching them out. The youngsters are very vulnerable when they're young, and then releasing them into the wild. And I got a chance to get my hands on the rarest crocodile and let it free into the Sierra Madre Mountains. It was beautiful.
It was really beautiful. I can't wait to see the two programs, Mike, on April 7 and 14 on BBC World News. Tell us, you've traveled around the world and seen so much wildlife and geology. What makes the Philippines different?
It's just beautiful people, remote islands. It's been isolated for millions of years, and there is unique wildlife there. And also as well, I had a terrific guide by a chap you may have heard of called Rico Hizon, who was the most wonderful accompaniment. So great people, brilliant wildlife, history, culture. It's a crossroad of so many diverse cultures.
Mike Dilger, and you can watch Philippines Islands Treasures on these times, April 7 and 14. Kasia, you have to watch it.
Oh, Rico, I can't wait. And it looks like you and Mike really got on, so that's certainly appointment viewing. From Rico, from me, from the whole team. Thanks for watching Newsday.
Hello, it really feels like spring has sprung across parts of Eastern China. Make no mistake, there is a lot of weather, varying types to come this Easter weekend. Some of it could cause some problems too. There'll be some rain around at times. Not just that, some snow. Easter Monday looks like a troublemaker. We'll see that in a moment. Temperatures on the cool to cold side of average. But there will be some drier, sunnier moments too. We'll detail all of that as we now look through the entire Easter weekend, starting with Good Friday. There'll be some snow showers affecting parts of northern Scotland from the word go, covering to some of the higher routes, an area of rain and hill snow moving from northeast England across other parts of eastern Scotland. Heavy showers developing in southern England, reaching into parts of Wales, Midlands, East Anglia later in the day, maybe with a rumble of thunder. Single-figure temperatures, colder still in an easterly wind across the northern half of the UK. Just 1 or 2 showers, but sunny spells into Northern Ireland. The moisture with these showers starts to feed a little bit further north through England and Wales during Friday night and into Saturday morning. Increasing chance of seeing a bit of snow over the tops of the Welsh Hills, maybe into the Pennines going Queensland into Saturday morning. Will be seeing these overnight temperatures. Some heat in those snow showers in the hills come down again. In northeast Scotland as well. Now for Saturday, the reason why we're seeing some rain and hill snow is this area of low pressure. Got the idea it's going to edge away eastwards, but it's still giving, particularly into parts of England and Wales, some outbreaks of rain and some hill snow to the Pennines. So all of this has to slide away gradually eastwards during the day. So some western parts may start to brighten up. Still those wintry showers northeast Scotland, southwest Scotland may fail quite well, although still be rather cloudy. Still that chilly breeze, particularly across the east coast towards the northeast. Single-figure temperatures once again. But look at this. Easter Day, Sunday. Well, the winds are lighter for a start. You may catch the odd shower, a frost to begin with, a few fog patches clearing, a few sunny spells around. Most places are actually dry. The rain and the strengthening wind coming towards southwest England later in the day. That is a sign of things to come for Easter Monday. Here comes another area of low pressure. Certainly got some moisture associated with it. It's feeding northwards, quite chilly air on Easter Monday, and that means rain, yes, but feeding into the cold air, the chance for some snow as it spreads further north as well. Maybe not just on hills, some of that could be disruptive as well, but there's still a lot to play for. Of course, Easter Monday is several days away, but just an early heads up that if you are travelling on Easter Monday, you do need to keep across that forecast because of that risk of snow that could cause some disruption. And we will, of course, keep you updated over the next few
Indian farmers are desperate. Incomes are falling, they have loans they can't repay, and every year thousands feel they have no choice but to take their own lives. The
Stories set to shape the news agenda.
Join me, Devina Gupta, for a special series of
Headlines, freshly written.
Asian tech companies are no longer
Original perspectives on the day's unfolding narratives. See the bigger picture as it emerges. The Papers, weeknights at 10:40 on the BBC News Channel.
Join us as we speak to them on BBC World.
What could meetings of the future Join Lenny Henry as he explores his Caribbean roots.
There's like a big stone in my heart.
And discovers what it means to be part of the Commonwealth. Its complicated legacy.
You're pretty much walking into history here.
And its potential future.
I think that it needs to be reimagined, rebranded.
Lenny Henry, the Commonwealth Kid. Easter Monday at 9 on BBC One.
I'm Kasia Madera with BBC World News. Our top story: Russia is expelling 60 US diplomats and officials in retaliation for identical US measures announced earlier this week. The Americans have been given a week to leave the country, and the US consulate in St. Petersburg is to be shut down. Well, one of the two Russians whose poisoning sparked this diplomatic row is recovering in hospital. Yulia Skripal is now conscious and talking after being poisoned with a nerve agent. And this video is trending on bbc.com. It shows a cheetah dropping in on a tourist on a safari in Tanzania. Well, one of the big cats jumped onto the car's bonnet, while the other actually climbed onto the back seat. The passenger, Britton Hayes from America, said that everyone stayed calm. That's all from me. Do stay with us here on BBC World News. Our top story here in the UK. Theresa May has toured the UK, promising to make Brexit a success for everyone. She said
live from Singapore,
extra money
business news as it breaks, and a look at the economic news that will shape the day. This is BBC World News and Asia Business Report.
The first quarter of the trading year is up. Will the second quarter from April to June be as volatile as the first? We'll get some answers. And farming is no longer confined to the rural parts of the country. We'll look at India's modern approach in the urban areas. Good morning, Asia. Hello, world. It's a Friday. Glad you could join us for this edition of Asia Business Report. I'm Rico Hizon. Well, it is the end of the week and also the end of the first financial quarter. Global stock markets have been volatile over the first 3 months of the year. And we've had trade war fears, tech stock wipeouts, and a long-awaited Fed rate hike from the U.S. For clues on what the next quarter will bring, I spoke to David Kuo from the Motley Fool, who told me volatility isn't necessarily a bad thing.
I hope we do see more volatility in the market, because ultimately volatility is an opportunity for people. If you know what you're doing, if you know what you're buying, then I think volatility is a good thing. What we don't really want is, sort of a flat market. We want some kind of activity, which is not a bad thing.
And this volatility was basically created by fears of higher inflation, rising interest rates. We've already seen that from the Fed. One rate hike, you have tech wipeouts and potential trade wars.
Well, yeah. I mean, there is a lot of noise in the market. I mean, we had this trade war, and you're absolutely right about the trade wars, or rather the trade disputes that are going on. But ultimately, what has really happened there? Not an awful lot. There've been a lot of talk about import tariffs coming into America on steel and aluminium, but there were also lots of exemptions. So many countries were exempted from this. So really, the target is China.
So what should we be watching out for this coming April?
I think ultimately what we want to sort of see is how the companies have been performing compared to this time last year. Because earnings will always drive the market. And people sometimes get distracted. Instead of looking at earnings, they're listening to all this noise that's in the market. And that's not very helpful. So if we get a good quarter, if we get a good quarter's earnings, from January to March, if we get some good results, get some good profits from these companies, then I think the market will just sort of steady.
Will there be another rate hike from the U.S. Fed? And if that happens, will Asian central banks be more aggressive in terms of monetary policy?
In terms of the first answer, absolutely certain we're going to get another rate hike. We're going to get probably three, if not four this year. So I mean, I think the Federal Reserve is very clear in its decision to increase interest rates and to normalize interest rates. So we're going to get 3-4 interest rate hikes in 2018.
Banks briefly.
And I think they will have to respond. They have no choice but to respond, because otherwise, they're going to actually sort of find turmoil. Some will be able to respond. Some will probably sort of hang on for a bit because they think inflation isn't a problem yet.
What to look ahead for in the year 2018, second quarter. And that was David Cole from the Motley Fool. Let's cross over now to Licia Santorelli for a look at other business news making headlines. Licia.
Thanks, Rico. Barclays has managed to negotiate a lower fine with the U.S. Department of Justice. The British bank has agreed to pay about $2 billion to settle claims that it missold mortgage-backed securities in the run-up to the financial crisis. U.S. authorities claim that Barclays caused billions of dollars in losses to investors. Now, sportswear brand Under Armour has been hit by a cyber attack. It said around 150 million accounts linked to its MyFitnessPal mobile app, which you should be seeing right now, was hacked earlier this year. The company said an unauthorized party stole data from the accounts, but that it's taken steps to alert users very soon after finding out about that breach. And Rico, it's a long weekend for many people looking to celebrate the Easter holiday. But if you had a ticket to fly on Air France, you might want to double check that booking. That's because more than a quarter of their flights on Good Friday, that's today, have been cancelled by another strike. And this is due to a long-running dispute over pay.
All the top business and financial news headlines from the newsroom. And my colleague and business reporter, Licia Santorelli. Well, urban farming is catching on in India's big cities, and with the market slated to grow rapidly over the next 5 years, many startups are trying to get a foothold. Consumers are increasingly worried about the quality of the food they eat and are choosing to grow their own food at home. To round off our week-long series on India's farming sector, we talked to a business owner catering to the urban farming community.
The whole idea was to encourage people to live sustainable lifestyles where we are less dependent on nature and we work with nature rather than working against it. You want each and every individual to have access to fresh, pesticide-free food, within 2 kilometers of their radius. Your food travels about 50 to 100 kilometers before it reaches your food plate. And that's increasing drastically because of the chemicals that we are using. We are turning our existing land barren. when people started growing their own produce, they saw how fresh it was, and when they could actually come and pluck it themselves, you know, and they could realize the difference when it came to taste, right? When they cooked it, how fresh it felt, the smell part of it. They realized it was way different than what came from the market. Nowadays, you actually get mango throughout the season, which is actually not possible. You get mangoes during the summers, right? They know what they're eating is not good and it's not good for their health, you know. So they're ready to take that extra step, go ahead and grow something of their own where they know what's going inside it. It's really not about saving our planet, or it's not working for Mother Earth. It's actually about saving ourselves.
Staying with India, and its government has announced plans to sell their 76% controlling stake in the national carrier Air India. But who would want the loss-making carrier? Over the past few years, the carrier seems to have hit the headlines for all the wrong reasons and has relied on taxpayer-funded bailouts to stay operational. If rats found on board, pilots asleep in the cockpit, panels dropping off an aircraft, and simmering disputes with staff, just some of the stories adding to its woes. Taylor, Asia Finance Editor at Flight Global, joins me now from Perth, Australia. Ellis, thank you so much for joining us. Wow, I just gave you a litany of mishaps that Air India has gone through recently. Has it really been that bad?
Look, there's a number of things, really to sum it up, what you could say from a business perspective is that Air India is kind of stuck in the past. It's a business model which a lot of airlines and countries have moved away from, of being a government-owned carrier, which has had a lot of inefficiencies. And they've resorted to things like in the past, you know, cannibalizing parts from different aircraft to keep the rest of the fleet going. And many of the other things that have been reported are out there. But, you know, from a pure business perspective, really, it's a little bit of a dinosaur, but it is in one of the fastest growing markets in the world, and it has exclusive access to a lot of international routes. So that's really what the appeal is of selling this stake.
All right. So there is appeal for Air India, but who would be interested to buy the stake from the government?
At this stage, I think it's going to be the other Indian airlines have certainly shown an interest, particularly Indigo. Vistara, which is the joint venture between Tata and Singapore Airlines, has given some interest, and I'd imagine we'll sort of see a bit more come from that. There could also be some interest from the Middle Eastern carriers, for whom India is quite a big market.
If you break down Air India, what would you say would be the better assets of the airline?
So the major asset that a lot of the potential investors have talked about is really the international operations. So slots and routes to places like London, the United States, etc., which a lot of the other Indian airlines can't get a hold of. So that's really what they've expressed an interest in. The problem with that is you're then also taking on this big behemoth which has about $5 billion of debt and 38,000 employees across the group. So you know, how much leeway gets given to sort of slim that down and bring that up to today's standard.
Do you think that this huge debt will be absorbed by the new investor, whether it be local or international?
The documents seem to indicate that the investor is planning to, or should take on about half that debt. So that's not as much as, of course, taking on the full debt. But you know how they deal with that, what leeway is given. Will they be able to renegotiate that debt? Will they be able to get lower interest rates on it? That remains to be seen.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Asia Business Report. Happy Easter to you, Ellis Taylor, aviation analyst at Flight Global. Let's have a brief look at the Asian market before we go. Because of the positive close on Wall Street overnight, the Dow and the Nasdaq finishing in positive territory. The Nikkei is up by a full % in early trade. Thank you so much for investing your time with us. I'm Rico Hizon. Bye for now.
Let's take a look at our main stories this hour. Moscow says that it is expelling 60 American diplomats in retaliation after the US ordered a similar number of Russians to leave in the row over the poisoning of a former spy. Donald Trump has suggested that he may delay the trade agreement that the US agreed with South Korea until a deal is struck with North Korea over denuclearisation.
Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
As police investigations continue in Shropshire after reports that up to 1,000 girls may have been abused over the past 4 decades, a woman has told the BBC that her teenage son was being groomed there until very recently.
BBC World News and BBC.com.
It's an image that Telford doesn't want. A town where child abuse is common, but it's not clear how true this is. Recent newspaper reports claimed hundreds of girls could have been abused here over the last 4 decades. A woman who doesn't want to be identified told the BBC her teenage son was being groomed in the town up until 6 months ago.
Taking up the
They were
challenge
giving
are
him
5
money,
women who
taking
have just
advantage
5
of him,
days to
getting
come up
him
with
drunk,
ideas to help
giving him
improve
drugs,
the situation for
just
female
really taking
footballers.
advantage of him.
Although
and
they
were
have to work
using him for
together on their
sex.
solutions,
There's no
these
way
women
anyone
have never
can
met
say
before.
grooming isn't happening
Time for some
today,
introductions.
because I know it is. My own son has
Footballer
been
Bia
going through
Vaz
it,
from
and there
São
are other
Paulo
people
has played
I know
for the
who are
Brazilian
still
national
going
women's
through it.
squad and
In
professionally in the
2013,
United
7
States.
men were jailed after police launched an
Fernanda is a
investigation
rower
into
and
child
competed in her home
prostitution.
city of
Some
Rio.
of those living
Drica
here said
grew up in one
it
of
was
Rio's
clear
favelas,
something very
dreaming of
disturbing
playing
was
football.
going on.
Now she's a coach
We began
for
to
other
see
children
guys driving
growing
up
in
and
poverty.
parking in the car
Maíra
park,
from
their
São Paulo
car
is
doors
the
open,
director
nice
of the
cars,
Women in
music
Sports
blaring,
program
not
for
going
the
into
female
anywhere or
campaign
doing anything,
group
but just
Think
sort of sat there in the
Olga.
car
And
park. And
finally,
then as the
2-time
girls were
Olympic
walking
beach
around the
volleyball
area,
silver
they would
medalist
approach the girls,
Adriana
talk
from
to
Rio
them,
is now
ask
on
them
the
did they want to go
Brazilian
to a
Olympic
party.
Committee.
It felt
Part of her
predatory,
role
like
is
there
to
was a
keep women
purpose
in
or an intent
sport.
there, which felt threatening.
Our experts
West
must
Mercia
reveal their
Police have said a
solutions to
small number of
sexism in
victims
sport
have
at a
come
mixed
forward
gender football
since
match
the new
at the end of the
allegations
week.
have come to light.
Telford has been at the centre of a media storm in recent weeks. The questions being asked now are, is child sexual exploitation worse here than in other parts of the country? And if so, why has it taken this long to bring that into the spotlight?
The council and its partners encourage anyone having experience of child sexual exploitation.
Tonight, at a meeting, the local council said it was not in denial and that it would put more resources into helping victims. The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse will be coming to Telford in May to speak to those affected, and now all eyes will be on what happens then. Seema Katecha,
Catch up
BBC
with
News,
all the latest
Telford.
sports news and results from around the
more
globe
details on
now
that
on
story
BBC World
on our
News
website.
in
Now let's
Sport
get all the
Today.
sports news in Sport Today.
Hello there, I'm Tom Tollett, and this is Sport Today, live from the BBC Sports Centre. Coming up on this programme, an emotional Steve Smith faces the world's media, while Australian cricket coach Darren Lehmann quits. Sloane Stephens is through to the Miami Open final after a 3-set win over two-time former champion Victoria Azarenka. And talk about starting the new baseball season in style. First pitch and a home run. Hello there, and welcome to the programme where we start with the cricketing news that just continues to evolve every day. After three Australian players, including now former captain Steve Smith, was sent home and given lengthy bans for ball tampering, Coach Darren Lehmann announced he'd be standing down after the fourth test against South Africa in Johannesburg starting in just over 7 hours' time. Smith gave an emotional press conference after landing in Sydney. And just to warn you, there's some flash photography in this report from our sports editor, Dan Rowan.
From Australian cricket's leader to its loneliest figure. Steve Smith back in Sydney and facing the cameras today, having been sent home in disgrace for his cheating scandal.
To all of my teammates, to fans of cricket all over the world, and to all Australians who are disappointed and angry, I'm sorry.
Supported by his father, the former captain's anguish obvious.
Anytime you think about making a questionable decision, think about who you're affecting your parents, and to see the way my old man's been. and my mum, it hurts.
Smith was banned for a year for covering up a teammate's use of sandpaper to tamper with the ball during the Cape Town Test match last weekend. Cameron Bancroft admitted today he also misled match officials when he was caught.
I lied about the sandpaper, and I panicked in that situation, and I'm very sorry.
Back in Johannesburg came yet another casualty of the crisis. 48 hours after being backed by his bosses to continue, Coach Darren Lehman quitting.
I just want to let you know that this was my last test as head coach of the Australian cricket team as I'm stepping down. After seeing events in the media today with Steve Smith and Cameron Bancroft, the feeling is that Australian cricket needs to move forward, and this is the right thing to do.
Meanwhile, the instigator of the cheating, Vice-Captain David Warner, had little to say as he arrived back on Australian soil with his family.
When fans gather here at the Wanderers tomorrow for the first day's action in the fourth and final Test match, all the talk will be about one of the most remarkable weeks in cricket history. The sandpaper plot has now cost Australia its captain, vice-captain and the head coach after Darren Lehman's dramatic resignation here just a few hours ago. Rarely has a cricket tour been laid quite so low.
One-sidelised.
That's the shot!
Then vilified, Smith's road to redemption began today, but this fall from grace has been particularly painful. Dan Rowan, BBC News, Johannesburg.
Staying with cricket in the opening day of the second and final test between New Zealand and England is into the second session in Christchurch. New Zealand won the toss and decided to send England into bat with Trent Boult and Tim Southee picking up the wickets of Alistair Cook and James Vince respectively in the morning session. England are currently 78 for 2 with the Black Caps having won the first test in Auckland. Now to tennis, Pablo Carreño Busta is through to the Miami Masters semi-finals after a tense three-set win over Kevin Anderson. The Spaniard had 2 match points in the second set, which he failed to capitalise on, and then saved the match point himself in the final tie-break against the South African. Before progressing in a little over 2 hours and 40 minutes, he'll face the winner of the last of the quarter-finals, which is on court later than expected after a lighting issue. That's between Germany's Alexander Zverev and Serbia's Borna Coric. The women's event, US Open champion Sloane Stephens is through to the final after coming from a set down to beat former world number one Victoria Azarenka. The American took her time to get going in Florida. Will appear in her first finals victory in New York last September. Regardless of the results against either Jelena Ostapenko or Danielle Collins, she'll move into the world's top 10. The new rankings are released next week. The opening round of the first women's golf major of the year, the ANA Inspiration, is nearing an end in California, with Japan's Ayuko Ohara and Spain's Beatriz Riccardi, the equal clubhouse leaders, on 6 under par. The 34-year-old Ohara made 8 birdies in her round that could have been even better if not for 2 bogeys, but she'll be content. Not so perhaps. This lady, the world number one, Shan Feng, who's 5 shots adrift, despite this lovely birdie on the 7th. What could prove to be shot of the tournament came from Iceland's Olafur Kristensdottir, who secured this incredible hole-in-one on the par 3 17th. Just wonderful, which helped leave her at level par. On the PGA Tour, there's a 3-way clubhouse lead at the Houston Open between the American trio Lucas Glover, Kevin Tway, Bo Hoster, and this man behind me, Sam Ryder, who is on 7 under with the first round having been suspended in the past few minutes due to bad light. This long-winding birdie putt from Glover on the 16th was one of the 7 he managed in a bogey-free round. Just got there. World number 9, Ricky Fowler, is just one shot off the pace with lovely putts like this. Had it not been for a bogey on the 6th, he'd have shared the lead. Well, winner 7 years ago, Phil Mickelson is currently 4 under on the final hole. His most impressive shot of the day came on the 5th hole with that wonderful player around the green. He chipped in there for birdie. Still got it, doesn't he? Now, with the start of the Commonwealth Games now just days away, Kenyan athletes will once again be under the spotlight as they look to improve on their Hall of 10 track gold medals in Glasgow 4 years ago. And many Kenyan champions train in the country's Rift Valley region, which has become the spiritual home of middle and long distance running. Our reporter Ed Harry has been to find out why athletes from all over the world have been flocking to join them.
dawn until dusk. There are training sessions going on all over this part of Kenya, from early morning yoga to high-intensity running drills. Life here is geared to making champions, from 800 metres double Olympic gold medalist David Rudisha to Mary Keitany, the marathon world record holder. So how does the region do it?
Most of the athletes, they assemble and they train together. They have a planned program, so they assist each other.
This is where winners are made, but Kenyans aren't afraid to share that knowledge, welcoming into their training groups athletes from all over the world.
The Kenyans are very friendly. They just tell you, if you want to join in, just join in. Then you'll see how far you go during the training session.
If you're out on your own and you come up or pass by a group of Kenyans, they'll motion for you to join them or ask you to come along with them. They're very friendly and inviting.
And it's not just elite athletes who come to E10. Club runners from around the world are paying thousands of dollars for unique holidays, much to the amusement of family and friends.
I told them I was coming to Kenya, and they're like, oh my god, it's amazing. Are you going on like 2 weeks safari? I was like, no, I'm going running for 2 weeks with the Kenyans. And then like one day safari, and they think I'm insane, but I love it. It's what I love doing at home. It's what I wanted to do as part of the holiday that I enjoy doing. For me, it's coming here to run the way that they run, be part of their daily life, really see how athletes train out here, but also experience their culture. You think that athletes back home train hard, and it doesn't compare at all.
So whether targeting a medal at the Commonwealth Games or just taking an active holiday, these athletes all hope spending some time in the Kenyan dust will turn them to winners. Ed Harry, BBC News, E10.
Well, to North America now from Africa, and the Major League Baseball season for 2018 got underway on Thursday, and something quite extraordinary happened when Chicago Cubs Ian Happ was at bat and managed to send the very first pitch of the game and the season into the bleachers over right field of the Chicago Cubs, champions in 2016. Went on to win 8-4 in Florida against the Miami Marlins. Former New York Yankees legend Derek Jeter as the new CEO. Just enough time to let you know, in the basketball and the NBA, staying in North America, there are 5 games taking place over the coming hours. Milwaukee Bucks up against the Golden State Warriors. That one gets underway in about an hour and a half's time. The Bucks are 8th in the Eastern Conference. The Golden State Warriors, of course, reigning champions. They're second in the Western Conference. That one, as I said, gets underway in a short while. And the cricket is 82 for 2. England are at the present. New Zealand won the toss in the second Test match and then sent them into bat as the second session on the opening day. But if you go to the website, you'll see the live text update on that. They're working very hard. Go to it. Till next time, though. Bye-bye.
Hello, make no mistake, there is a lot of weather, varying types to come this Easter weekend. Some of it could cause some problems too. There'll be some rain around at times.
We are a growing community of people.
Snow. Easter Monday looks like a troublemaker. We'll see that in a moment. Temperatures on the cold side of average. But there will be some drier, sunnier moments too. We'll detail all of that as we now look through the entire Easter weekend, starting with Good Friday.
4 or 5 times a week, so
snow showers affecting parts of northern Scotland from the word go, are covering to some of the higher routes. An area of rain and hill snow moving from northeast England across other parts of eastern Scotland. Heavy showers developing in southern England, reaching the parts of Wales, Midlands, East Anglia later in the day, maybe with a rumble of thunder. Single-figure temperatures, cold still an easterly wind across the northern half of the UK. Places take on this technology. Into Northern Ireland. Moisture with these showers starts to be a little bit further north through England and Wales during Friday night and into Saturday morning. Decent chance of seeing a bit of snow at the tops of the Welsh hills, maybe into the Pennines going into Saturday morning. Easier overnight temperatures. Still some of those snow showers showers in the hills in northeast Scotland as well. Now for Saturday, the reason why we're seeing some rain and hill snow is this area of low pressure. Got the idea it's going to edge away eastwards, but it's still giving, particularly into parts of England and Wales, some outbreaks of rain and some hill snow to the Pennines. So all of this has to slide away gradually eastwards during the day. Some western parts may start to brighten up. Still those wintry showers north-northeast Scotland. Southwest Scotland may fare quite well, although still be rather cloudy. Still that chilly breeze, particularly across some of these coasts towards the northeast. A single-figure temperatures once again.
Mexico's bloody drug war has lasted over
Sunday.
a decade.
Well, the winds are lighter for a start. You may catch the odd shower.
The
Frost to begin with, a few fog patches clearing. A few sunny spells around. Most places are actually dry. So rain and the strengthening wind coming towards southwest England later in the day. That is a sign of things to come for Easter Monday. Here comes another area of low pressure. Certainly got some moisture associated with it. It's feeding northwards. Quite chilly air on Easter Monday, and that means rain, yes, but feeding into the cold air, the chance for some snow as it spreads further north as well. Maybe not just on hills, some of that could be disruptive as well, but there's still a lot to play for. Of course, Easter Monday is several days away, but just an early heads up that if you are travelling on Easter Monday, you do need to keep across that forecast because of that risk of snow that could cause some disruption. And we will, of course, keep you updated over the next
incomes are falling, they have loans they can't repay, and every year thousands feel they have no choice but to take their own lives. The agriculture sector
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. All those moments, like tears in rain.
I seem to be living in a time when all of the tech from my favourite childhood sci-fi films is coming true. How do they achieve this? Witchcraft. Emojis are here to stay.
Whoa! That makes me feel quite dizzy.
Paper. Scissors.
Join us as we speak to them on BBC World.
I think that could catch on.
Meetings of the future.
Why not tax robots? It's definitely watching.
You won't have a job.
It is very immersive.
Unspot revolution that's happening here. I'm inside Marrow World.
Make me more productive.
We're going to be on a Tinder day.
The way we work is they want to work out what makes a winning performance different in the future.
Oh, I can feel the heat of the laser sword.
The future is coming. Watch Click to see it live. Saturday and Sunday at 12:30 on the BBC News channel.
Your lifestyle. And now you can swipe your way through the news of the day. Set to shape video at your fingertips. You can stay up to date with the best news stories from around the world, as well as the latest breaking news and headlines you can trust. Wherever you have original perspectives on the day's unfolding narratives. Now from selected app stores. See the bigger picture as it emerges. The Papers, weeknights at 10:40 on the BBC News channel.
Very warm welcome to BBC News, broadcasting to our viewers in North America and around the globe. My name is Mike Embley. Our top stories. Moscow expels 60 American diplomats. The UN warns the spy poisoning case is pushing Russia and the West towards a new Cold War. Yulia Skripal, one of the victims of the Salisbury nerve agent attack, is now conscious and talking. Her father, Sergei, remains critically ill. Theresa May promises to make Brexit a success for everyone and insists it will mean more money for schools and hospitals. The battle for blue skies. Beijing cuts pollution by half in the hope of a brighter future.
See you later. Oh man, Spain.
And a tearful apology from Australia's sacked cricket captain for his role in the ball tampering scandal. Hello to you. Russia has responded to the expulsion of 60 of its diplomats from the United States by sending home an equal number of American diplomats. It is the latest twist in the international dispute over the poisoning of a former Russian agent and his daughter in the UK. The American ambassador was summoned to the foreign ministry to be told the US consulate in St. Petersburg must close. Russia is still denying any involvement in the chemical attack, as Steve Rosenberg reports from Moscow.
The diplomatic pressure has been unprecedented. Russian diplomats expelled, foreign ambassadors recalled after the Salisbury attack. It was never a question of whether Moscow would respond, but when. Tonight,